How's it going, guys? So, yeah, I think we're live. It's always hard to tell with these live streams when stuff actually goes live. So, once you guys can hear and see me, please let me know if it looks and sounds okay. Let me know if we have any super strong, super bad technical issues. There's always something, right? So, how are you guys doing? Yeah, I've been posting a lot of videos lately. It's kind of my down season, meaning it's my slower season. I don't have anything for a while yet. Thank you, Mark. Don't have anything for a while. The next stuff that I have coming up is I'm going to some event in Jackson Hole. It's like a Sony sponsored thing that they've invited me to. It's basically just a shooting weekend in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. That's coming up in 2 weeks. And then the week after that, shooting an NFL game. I'm going to be shooting the Cowboys at the Saints. And I'm excited about that. That's like the highlight of my year every single year. And then in October, I have a couple of Oregon Coast things. And then in November, another Oregon Coast thing. And then December, I go to Iceland. So then it starts picking up. So, but for these last like month and a half, I've had nothing going on. The weather has been too clear and just blank skies, and it makes photography just difficult during the summer months. Plus, my son is out of school, which means that I need to be a dad. You know the drill. So, anyways, yeah, we got some questions rolling in. We're gonna be answering a few questions and just kind of having an informal little chat. So, why don't we jump in on the first question? Rodney asks, what brand is the small keyboard that I use with my Wacom tablet? So, released a video about this Wacom tablet today. If you haven't already seen that, kind of talking about why I like it, why I use it, how I set it up, all that stuff. One of the things that I mentioned is this tiny little keyboard that I put right next to my Wacom tablet. I purposely get a really small keyboard because it fits nicely next to my Wacom tablet. If I had a big, long, wide keyboard of some kind, it would feel like, you know, either my tablet's going to be way over here and I'll have to stretch in order to use it properly, or my keyboard's going to be way over here and I'm going to have to reach way over in order to type. By getting a really small, compact keyboard, I can have both of them in front of me and being able to use them smoothly. One of the things I mentioned in that video that I posted today is that I don't really use many of these programmable buttons on the Wacom tablet. I use the little dial, but I don't program the buttons very much, just because I have them both right here in front of me, meaning my tablet and my keyboard. So it's quicker for me to just use hotkeys. I can easily reach down and hit all of my, Control S's, my Control Alt deletes, whatever. Control Alt delete. Don't need to. But you get the idea. I can hit all of my hotkeys because my keyboard's right there. Next question. Did I get the Sony a7R IV, and do I think it's actually worth the upgrade? So I did pre-order the a7R IV, and I went to another Sony event. They invited me to the Sony Kando event, which is basically just it's almost like a photo conference for Sony users. And part of that is that they invite a whole bunch of YouTubers and those kind of people, influencers, quote unquote, to this thing. I just went and roamed around, went to some classes. I didn't actually do anything. But one of the cool parts of that is that they just let you borrow gear. Anything that they have, you can borrow, which is really cool. And one of the things that they had was Sony a7R IV. So I did get to play with it. Didn't really take many photos with it just because the opportunity didn't really present itself. The light was crappy and I couldn't really convert the raw files anyways yet. But I did play with it. Ergonomics are way better. Image quality, obviously going to have way more resolution. ISO performance, stuff like that. Dynamic range, not a huge improvement, but the autofocus definitely is a big improvement. So the improvement on autofocus and the ergonomics alone makes it a nice upgrade. And part of my philosophy with gear has always been that assuming that I have like, the top of the line, whatever, currently I have A7R3, assuming I have that, as soon as the replacement for that camera comes out, I sell my camera and replace it with a new one. And the reason I do that is because it doesn't give that camera that I've been shooting with more time to devalue, because my Sony A7R3 is just going to lose its value very, very fast for the next year or so. So by selling it as soon as I can, as soon as I'm able to replace it with that R4, it means that I'm always shooting with the newest gear. And I've probably lost, like, by the time, I get around to selling it, I've probably lost like $1,200 from what I paid for it to what I'm selling it for. So $1,200 over the course of, I've probably had a year and a half, isn't that bad if you consider that, like, it's like renting it for what, under $100 a month, which, considering how heavily I've used it, it's not that bad. So that's kind of my philosophy with cameras. As soon as I can replace it, I sell my old one, upgrade to the new one. That way I don't lose as much money. If I sit there and hold on to this camera for another 3 years, granted, I get a lot more use out of it, but it will completely devalue and be completely worthless by the time I sell it, to the point where it's not even worth selling, and I would struggle to sell it anyway. Okay, let's see. Question: Lightroom or Capture One? I'm an Adobe person, and the honest answer to that is neither of them. Photoshop. If you're somebody that, I don't use Capture One. I've played around with it a little bit, but I haven't used it very heavily. I know there are some people that swear by it and really like it, but as a landscape photographer, I'm always pushing people towards Photoshop, because Photoshop trumps both of them. If you're just doing really light editing, I could definitely see that Lightroom or Capture One being enough. But because I like to do heavy editing, I like to, take full control over everything. I'm a control freak in that way. I prefer Photoshop. And so I'm kind of deeply entrenched in Adobe, because not only am I doing photo editing, I'm also editing podcasts. So I use Adobe Audition. I'm editing video, so I use Adobe Premiere, and I'm using Photoshop and Lightroom. It makes sense for me to do the $50 a month thing and just use Adobe products. Let me scroll up here. Sounds good. Thank you. Be one of those. Feelings about the A9 Mark II rumors. Well, I'm an owner of an A9 Mark I, so that means like, oh crap, I don't want to have to upgrade both cameras right now. That's the problem. That's the whole with the philosophy of like updating my cameras when the replacement comes out. What happens if they update at the same time? Does that mean that I'm going to drop that much money for two cameras? That kind of sucks. The A9 Mark I is an awesome camera, as is, and it'll continue to be an excellent camera. I have to think that it's going to have a better focusing system of some kind. It's probably going to have more megapixels of some kind. Doesn't need to be any faster. I'm not really sure, other than resolution, how they could really even improve it. That'll be interesting. When I see that it's going to be updated, I'm like, oh, crap. Because that means that if I'm going to update it, I need to update it soon, which means like, man, I have to shell out a bunch more money. That sucks. So that's kind of my feelings about it. I'm sure it's going to be a good camera. Do I miss shooting Canon? Mike asks. There are things that I do miss. Like when I feel like, this is how I've been feeling lately, and it probably has nothing to do with the camera. Let's be honest. It has nothing to do with the camera, but I do feel like I took some of my best photos with Canon. It's been a while since I've outdone any of my old photos. That has to do more with the fact that I'm not getting out as much to shoot, and I've kind of plateaued. I've reached this point where I'm not trying as hard. My motivation hasn't been where it was there for a while, and I'm just not getting out to shoot on my own as much as I used to. Problem with leading workshops as much as I do is that those workshops require so much of my time that there's no time left to go shoot on my own, unfortunately. So that means that, I'm not getting out to shoot as much. So I have some sentimental feelings towards the Canon stuff just because I took some of my best photos with Canon. There are some features that I miss, like on my 5D Mark IV, I miss the touchscreen capabilities. I miss the quality of that rear LCD screen. I feel like that was better than my Sony. I miss maybe the colors a little bit. I feel like some of the colors were easier to process. Everything else, I like Sony better. You know, I feel like my image quality is much better with the Sony stuff. Sensor is much better. Video blows away the Canon. So I'm creating better video content. Not sure that I'm creating better photo content, but that just has to do with the lack of me getting out to shoot on my own regularly. Let's see. When I fly, do I carry my photo gear or do I check it? I always carry on my photo gear. I never check even a piece of my photo gear unless there are some times where I'll just like throw my drone or something with no batteries in it inside my checked luggage. But I am always packing all of my photo gear either in one of my Shimoda bags. It's either my 40 liter or my 60 liter. Both are totally carry-on-able. And I always have my tripod mounted to the side of my bag as well, because nothing would be worse than flying to Iceland to photograph waterfalls and seascapes and then having them lose my luggage, lose my expensive tripod, and then have to handhold a bunch of waterfall shots. That wouldn't be very much fun. So I always carry on all of my camera gear because, for one, it's got all the lithium batteries. You can't have that go underneath the plane because it'll all explode. And I don't want to show up to a place without my photo gear or my tripod. What's my process for getting media passes to events? You'd like to shoot at the local drag strip, and you keep hearing you're not a licensed business or shoot for a publication. Well, you're onto something there. If you can find a publication, any publication, to shoot for free, there's your ticket in. It doesn't have to be like the local newspaper. Maybe it can even be a stretch. Maybe it's a online blog about, amateur drag racing or whatever. You find any kind of outlet that has a use for those photos and offer to take the photos for free. That'll get your foot in the door. I shoot a lot of music stuff. I like to shoot band concerts and stuff. And one of the things that I'll do is I'll just reach out to the venue and be like, hey, do you guys need a photographer for the night? I'd love to come down and do some photos for you. But it helps to have examples of that kind of work, which is the hard part, because in order to get examples of that kind of work, you have to get your foot in the door somewhere. So shooting for a publication of some kind and offering to do it for free is a good way to get your foot in the door that way. Can I do a video on my Wacom tablets? On my Wacom tablet setup? I posted that today. Check it out. Bio 7021. Let's see. I'm falling so far behind. That's the problem with this. If I give long answers, I fall way behind. Enjoyed the storm chasing video recently. I've been chasing storms for 20 years. We need to get out and shoot some real lightning with real storms sometime. I would love to go down to the Midwest and see like a real legit storm. I've never seen a supercell. We get some decent sized stuff up here, but it's always kind of messed up by the mountain ranges. I'd love to do that. Let's see. What kind of monitor do I have for handling my photos? So I have, let's just turn the camera here. This, if you can see this is a BenQ 27-inch wide gamut monitor. So the cool part about BenQ monitors, well, this particular monitor, is it's a wide gamut, meaning that you can see the entire Adobe RGB gamut, which means that like when you're printing, you can actually see all of your colors in the entire color range. Super powerful if you print very much. It does take some getting used to, because that wider gamut takes some getting used to. You're seeing more color, so you perceive it as more saturation. And sometimes, whoops, my light just turned off. See, these are the kinds of things. Let's turn that back on. if I can. My video light totally died. What is up with that? Let's see if I can fix it. Hold on 1 second. So I have a video light here. That's so funny. I have a video light and it has a remote, and the remote for some reason wasn't working, but it seems to be working now. It seems brighter than it was. Might have to adjust my exposure a bit. We'll see how that looks. That's funny. Yeah, so wide gamut monitors are really useful if you print very much. So really nice, high quality monitor, but it does take some getting used to. Time to dump Premiere and get DaVinci Resolve. Gavin, I've heard how long it takes for you to edit a video, and I'm not sure that you're selling DaVinci Resolve very well. By the way, really loved that video you did with Blake where he demonstrated how to properly make Uncle Grumpy, transport himself. I really loved the edit. I feel like it was one of the most tasteful photos to enter your portfolio. Let's see. Have I used the 24mm G Master? Yes, I have. Really nice lens. When I went to Scotland, I had it with me and didn't really work so well for vlogging. It was just too shallow, I think. The depth of field was too shallow, and it's 24mm is too tight for vlogging. Really sweet lens though. I'd love to use it for Astro. I haven't had the opportunity to do that. Let's see. Drew asked, am I getting the A7R4 on the first day? I hope so. Let's see. How's my Rick asks. Rick went with me to the Faroe Islands. He says, how is your tripod holding up, and would I still recommend the Really Ride Stuff tripod and ball head? Yeah. All my Really Ride stuff is still 100% functional. Haven't had a single problem with it. I have the original Series 3.4L, like that's kind of my big daddy tripod, and then I've got my my 2.4 Series Mark II with a BH40 on top, and I feel like the new Mark II version, it's a nice update. Like I really like how they're watertight for one. It does take a little bit of getting used to. The cool thing about the Really Ride Stuff tripod legs is when you close the legs, or when you shoot in water will get inside, but it can't get anywhere near your threads, which is pretty cool. But when you close the legs, there's like a little air vent at the top of the legs, and it actually shoots the water out. And the first time I did that, I totally shot myself in the face with bunch of nasty seawater. That was a good time. When I'm coming to the Humboldt shoot and shooting the redwoods on the coast, I'd love to. I need to get over that way soon. Let's see. Skip my question, and I'm sad. I'm sorry, Mike. The thing is, there's so many questions. Let's see. Mike from Germany here. How did I get a grasp on luminosity masks? And would I recommend Jimmy McIntyre's masking panel? Okay. There's a loaded question. Okay, let's talk luminosity masking panels. You have Raya Pro from Jimmy McIntyre. You have TK Actions from Tony Kuiper with Sean Bagshaw kind of as the instructor for that. You have Lumenzia from Greg Benz. And then you have the ADP panel from a guy, I can't remember his name right now. So my personal favorite is Lumenzia. Probably the most powerful of them all is TK Actions. The problem I find with TK Actions is it's pretty complex to look at, but it will do just a ton of stuff. And another problem that I don't really love about TK Actions is just the amount of space it generally takes up. That's what I like about Lumenzia is it's more simple and elegant and a little bit more Spartan in its appearance, but it still does everything that I need it to do. ADP panel and Raya Pro both have a whole lot of kind of one-click editing solutions. Raya Pro especially, it just does a bunch of stuff that I don't care for. Another thing is that with Raya Pro and TK Actions, the tutorials to teach you how to use it are not free. That's kind of a problem, but I believe in ADP and both in Lumenzia as well, all the tutorials are free. So that's a big bonus. Plus, there's a free version of the Lumenzia panel. You can just go get Lumenzia Basic and you can get a lot of the functionality of it for free. So you should check that out if you're interested in that stuff. Oh, I'm so far behind. Yeah, Photo Tripper says cheeky. Hey, you're damn right I'm cheeky, Mr. Gavin. Yeah, Gavin's just here to troll. Answer David's question. I'm curious as well. Let me scroll up and find David's question. David from Sydney, Australia. Has anyone taken a long exposure of a cyclone? I don't know. I think most people are like fearing for their lives when they do it. So long exposures probably, most people don't have the patience in that moment for a long exposure, I wouldn't think, but it would be kind of cool. Let's see. What's the funniest thing that's ever happened to me while doing landscape photography? Oh, but when you put me on the spot like that, it's really hard to come up with an answer. Man, you know, I don't have a lot of moments like Gavin has where I accidentally, you know, shite myself. But I would have to think about it. David Akubian, good to see you in here. Where is that a signature Nick Page shirt, and where can you get one? Like, yeah, I should get like a signature Nick Page, you know, mechanics style shirt. I feel like that's kind of my look right now, like wearing mechanics style shirts, but no, it's just a Columbia shirt. How's it going, Frank? Good to see you. Andrew, Drew Armstrong, I have the 24L Mark 1, and I wish one would break so I could get a Mark 2. Yeah. The thing is, Really Right Stuff gear holds its value really well, so you could probably sell it. Do I ever get annoyed with Instagram and feel like more subtle photos that might be very good and interesting get overlooked? Yes. Here's the thing about Instagram. You can have someone like, you can have Kim Kardashian, for example, take a picture of anything. It could be her breakfast. It could be her butt. And it would dominate any photo that I'll ever take in my entire life. All of my photos combined would not get the reach that a photo of her breakfast would. Instagram is not where, you know, good photography is going to ever really stand out. It is a good place for reaching an audience. It's where there's a whole bunch of people. But for the most part, the only stuff that's really going to rise to the top on Instagram are stuff that looks good at about this big. Because people see your photos at max the size of like not even a business card. And that's no way for a subtle, well composed, you know, tasteful photo. That it's not going to be presented well at that size. So don't feel too bad if you have a photo that you feel is one of your strongest and it doesn't do well on Instagram. It's because Instagram is not designed for subtle, tasteful photography. It's designed for just like, you know, vomit on a page, circus vomit on a phone, and, you know, turn the saturation to 11 and it'll probably do pretty good on Instagram. That's how I feel about that. Would Thomas Heaton make it in the military? He treats photography like a combat mission. Is that accurate? He would totally make it in the military. What are you talking about? He is the Bear Grylls of photography. Like, don't you see that? What I love about Thomas is the fact that he can pump out a video like nobody else. Like, he is so good, and he's got such a great work ethic when it comes to vlogging and recording his day no matter what happens. And I suck at that. Like, I'll start to record and then I'm like, this is all crap. And then I just quit. But Thomas Heaton never quits. I have mad respect for Thomas. Frank Silva, how stoked am I for the new A7R4? I'm pretty stoked. I think it's going to be subtly better. You know, like I'm seeing some tests now that show that the ISO performance, not quite as good, but it's because it's a higher resolution camera, and the dynamic range is like about the same, almost not as good. So it's there's going to be areas where it's not a huge upgrade, but for anybody that shoots handheld at all, anybody that prints large at all, anybody that needs a good autofocusing system, it's going to be a great upgrade for those reasons. Yes, Michael Olbinski is awesome. I need a Lumenzia affiliate link. I do. But the cool part is Greg Benz is an awesome dude, so I don't need a kickback from that. I'm just happy to help him out. But I also, just, in my opinion, it's the best one. And I've used them all. Let's see. What is my take on third-party lenses like Sigma, Tamron, and first-party branded lenses? Kind of depends on the camera system. Anymore, Sigma and Tamron lenses, they're getting every bit as good as first-party lenses. Like, especially Sigma, if you are a DSLR shooter, their Art Series lenses are better than most of the first-party lenses. On the Sony system, you know, Sigma hasn't really been much of a player, but Tamron actually has several really nice, lightweight lenses that are made specifically for the Sony system, and they seem to be doing really well. So it used to be like some of the older ones are kind of junky, but nowadays everybody's making good lenses. Yes, Adam's faceplant in the snow. Gavin brings up that whole thing. I'm so glad that we were all filming it, because that morning was just one of the most fun mornings of photography I've had. I was absolutely exhausted just from trying to swim through snow. It turns out I'm not a good snowshoeing photographer, but the day in question we're talking about, I believe it was my second video from the Canadian Rockies where we all snowshoe into a location. It's my first time ever snowshoeing, and we're trying to do it through about 6 or 7 feet of powder, and it was brutal. It was ridiculous, but it was probably the most heavily documented morning ever, because you have 4 people all vlogging it, but it was such a cool morning. Have I tested the Sony 12-24? Yes, I didn't. You can't call it a test. I played around with it. That was one of the lenses that I borrowed at that Sony event, and I found it to be good. It was good. I don't think I would choose it over a 16-35 just because the bulbous front element. You can't use filters very easily. Not terribly sharp in the corners. Sunstar isn't great, but it's a good lens and it's nice and wide. That's something I would really like to have, is a really solid 14 millimeter lens on a Sony. Something that is like a 14 millimeter prime, super sharp. I'll be very interested in that. Great to see me online. Please teach us luminosity exposure masking. I'm a great fan of your photography and post-processing. Thank you, Ambar. It's not Amber, it's Ambar. Yeah, thanks. I plan on doing a video showing how luminosity masks help with exposure blending. I plan on doing that soon. What is the model of the small tablet that I have? This is the Wacom Bluetooth 10.4 inch wireless tablet. So I would not recommend getting this as your only Wacom tablet. I only recommend this for travel, because especially if you're used to this is kind of frustrating because it doesn't have the accuracy. Like when you go to move a slider in Lightroom or something and then you lift up and let go, it doesn't feel like the slider stays where you wanted it to stay. It's pretty annoying in that way, but it's awesome for travel and it's way better than a mouse. Curtis asks, been a huge fan of my work for ages. Thank you, sir. Any places or countries I haven't been yet that is on my list? Next year, I'm going to Greenland, and that's pretty exciting. Adam Gibbs just got back from Greenland, and I'm going to be I'm going with the same people that he's working with, but to a different place. So Adam's kind of going up in the mountains. I'm going to try to be going out among the icebergs and around the glaciers and stuff, and hopefully see a polar bear or two. But yeah, that's on the docket for next year, and I'm excited about that. I'm really drawn to more Arctic cold climates. Must be the Scandinavian in me. Let's see. Man, I'm so far behind. Every time I think I'm doing good, I scroll a little bit and I'm like, let's see. Quark Charmed asks, your composition and processing style, could you name someone who's influenced my style the most? I would say three photographers have probably influenced me the most. Enrico Fossati, gotta check him out. I love Enrico's work. Ryan Dyer is one of those guys that he's the king of epic. And right there in that same vein is Mark Adamus. I'm a Mark Adamus fan. His new stuff is awesome. Mark Adamus. Michael Shaneblum, another awesome photographer. Aaron Bobnick, another awesome photographer. Ted Gore, awesome photographer. Alex Noriega, awesome photographer. There's kind of a band of American photographers, except for Enrico, but there's a group of American photographers that have, similar styles, and a lot of them, their work really resonates with me, and I kind of cherry pick what I like best. I love the mood and the feel of Enrico's work. I love the epicness of Mark Adamus's work. I love the tastefulness of Alex Noriega's work. So I kind of cherry pick from a lot of different people. For my sports work, have I tried eye autofocus on the Sony? So when I shot that soccer game, I don't know how much I talked about it, but it was incredible how well the eye autofocus and the facial recognition, can't talk. See, that's the nice part about editing my videos is I can edit my stumbles out. But the eye autofocus and the facial recognition in the A9 worked so good for soccer. Like if in sports photography, if their face is there, like in basketball, it works like a charm. You don't have to put any effort into moving a focus point or doing anything. You just get it, you point it at a player and it finds a face, finds an eyeball and tracks it. It's incredible. It's taking all of the skill and technique and difficulty away from, the art of like moving a focus point and keeping it on the player. You don't have to do that anymore. You just try to track the action, compose your shot. It's amazing. It works really well. It doesn't work at all in football. Doesn't work at all in any kind of sport where they're wearing a helmet of any kind. It just throws it off. But for things like basketball and soccer, it's really, really cool. Am I either coming to the island of New Zealand to shoot? I definitely want to. It's on my list. Maybe I can talk the F4 guys into going down there. Just saying. Faceplant was epic. Yes, it was, Drew. Do I have any vlogs from Glacier National Park? No, I don't. I've actually never been there. I really want to go, but never been. Do I recommend buying a lens for my 77D or buying the A7R3 77D? I'm trying to remember what that even is. So 77D. Let me Google it really quick. I know people are going to be like 77D camera. Okay, 77D. That was that's an older one. Dude, you would see a massive upgrade if you switch to pretty much any newer camera. Oh, let's see. You're asking about A7R3. It'd be a huge upgrade for sure. But, I would actually push you to an A7 III rather than A7R3, just because the A7 III, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. And and you're going to save some money so you can actually invest a little bit in lenses. If you do want to go the Sony route, which is a pretty good route to go these days because the future is looking pretty bright in Sony land. I would say the future is looking bright in Nikon mirrorless. Canon mirrorless, I'm skeptical of. It just, they've got a long ways to go. But if you did want to go to Sony, I would push you towards an A7 III and save some money. That way you've got more to invest in lenses. Any thoughts on software such as On1, Photo Raw, or Capture One? From Patty asks. So I've never used any of them. And I've used Luminar, and it was kind of like, meh. It was just like, I didn't care for Luminar at all. I think On1 and Capture One, I know there's a lot of people that really like it. I've never used it myself. I'm skeptical that it do as much as Photoshop. If someone is knowledgeable in Photoshop, it's going to be very difficult to find another software that does everything they want it to do because, you know, if you are utilizing all the power of Photoshop, there's just a lot that you can do in Photoshop that you can't do in any other program. Let's see. How long did it take me to find my editing style, and how long did it take me to feel comfortable using Photoshop? Photoshop was a progression. It took me, I'm still learning stuff all the time in Photoshop, which is awesome because learning those new things is the fun of all of this for me. Learning new techniques, learning new post-processing stuff, that's what I call a good time. It would be boring if I wasn't still learning. But my editing style, it's one of those things where you kind of develop a bag of tricks. You tend to use those bag of tricks fairly often, but you never put any kind of thought into what my style is. You know, for me, it's just maybe you can sense influences and stuff, kind of like a musician when they're writing music. You can kind of tell what they've been listening to lately. You know, they've been listening to a lot of Beatles or a lot of Jethro Tull, whatever. You know, you can tell what they've been listening to because their music is influenced by what they're listening to. The same is true for photo editing. I'm either in a particular mood or I've been, you know, appreciating really into a certain style lately, and I'm just editing that, and people see that as your style from the outside, but from the inside, you're just kind of doing what is coming to mind. It's not something I ever put thought into, but I like to think that it's always changing and evolving because I don't want to do the same thing over and over and over because there's no fun in that. Rick says, fantastic, see me live for the first time. Thank you, Rick. Let's see. Do I still use the SMDV wireless trigger? No, I don't. I don't know if I have. Yeah, so I've replaced that with this Sony. Let's see if I can get camera to focus on it. With the Sony remote. I really like this Sony remote because it doesn't require any kind of dongle. Once you pair it via Bluetooth with the camera, you turn this on and it just works. And it's really cool because it's got a fantastic range and I don't ever have to deal with cables or well, I guess I do have to deal with batteries, but no cables or anything like that. It works really well and it works with all my Sony stuff. Ambar asks, would like to go to photography with a team or alone? If we travel in a team, then sometimes we end up talking more and taking less photos. I always prefer to go. Okay. Sometimes I like to go by myself because I feel like, especially if I'm going to try to record a vlog, I get a little self-conscious when people are watching me. So that part's kind of nice. And, you know, some types of photography, I just want to like zen out and be quiet and be by myself and have some alone time. But if you're on a photo trip of some kind, you're almost always more fruitful if you go with a group. Because in a group setting, you know, the enthusiasm, if you're not feeling enthusiastic that day and this guy is, your day is going to be more fruitful because that guy's enthusiastic. It's all rubs off. And a person never wants to be the lame one in a group. So, you're always going to get up for sunrise. Sometimes when I go by myself, I'm like, the light looks like crap. I'm going to sleep through sunrise. But if I'm in a group setting, that never happens. So I find those group settings to be far more fruitful. Let's see. Do I think that I'd want to do some serious storm chasing at some point? Yes. I love photographing storms. Photographing storms it's one of those truly exciting things for me. Big surf, storms, like anything that makes me feel small, I love that. But for the really serious storm photography stuff, I think I'm going to wait till my son's a little older because I know how dangerous it is. I don't want to, I don't want to pass at an inopportune time when my son is growing up. So I'm going to let him get a little bit older till he doesn't need dad quite so much before I do the really dangerous stuff. Any tips on focal length blending? So focal length blending, very powerful. The biggest thing is don't do it too extreme. So for example, if you're focal length blending, for you guys that don't know what this is, it's when you take a wide angle foreground and combine it with a slightly longer focal length background. Because when you take that wider focal length foreground, that mountain in the background or whatever is prominent in the background gets really small and really insignificant. But if you combine a 16 millimeter foreground with a 24 or a 30 millimeter background, it makes what is in the background important again. So I recommend don't overdo the difference in your focal length blend. If you're doing 16 millimeters for your foreground, don't go beyond like 30 or 35 millimeters max for your background. If you try combining that with 50 millimeters, it's just going to look hokey. It's going to look too fake. So keep it real, keep it in the realm of possibility, keep it in the realm of human experience, because you think about it, a focal length blend is actually mimicking how we experience a place. When we go to a place, we look down, we see the rocks and the flowers. We look up, we see a big impressive mountain at about 35 millimeters. We don't see a 16 millimeter mountain that's this big. So keep it in the realm of human experience. Let's see. Any tips for Kauai? North Shore is super photogenic. Shoot sunrises a lot because there's far less tourists. Go in the off season. If you go during the summer months, it's just nuts. Like there's a lot of tourists there. Yes. Let's see. What lenses would I choose to shoot a solar eclipse? Depends. If you're photographing a solar eclipse and you can line up some kind of element, with the sun somehow, somebody that has probably the coolest solar eclipse shot is Michael Shainblum. And he went to a particular rock outcropping where they had mountain climbers rappelling off of this rock, and then they put the mountain climber right in front of the sun. It was absolutely incredible. He probably took that shot at 400 millimeters, maybe slightly longer. But typically, the more you can fill the frame with it, the better. When I shot this solar eclipse, I shot it with my 600 millimeter, and it still was only representing, a fourth of the frame or something like that. So nice long focal lengths. I would go 100 to 400 at least, and then try to get some kind of something, element, subject, to be somewhere in the frame so you can put it kind of close. Okay, we'll take one more question here. Gabe says, Nick Page, Pacific Northwest love. Awesome. iKing says, my father is a good fan of you. Cool. Let's see here. Got David. Thanks for all the great advice for us old dogs. No problem, David. David is an awesome photographer, by the way. Seth says, at what point would you say you gained a lot of media traction? Instagram, YouTube, product sales, podcast listeners. Any particular actions I took to stand out? The biggest thing that I've done to try to stand out is to try not to be influenced by the trends and what is popular. Like, people don't like me because, You know, I'm top 5 tips on how you can be a better photographer. Top 5 tips for beginning photographers. I try really hard not to be influenced by all the trendy crap. I try to just be real, be myself. Don't try to be perfect. Don't try to be more knowledgeable than I am. Just try to be real and be who I am. And as funny as that sounds, like being yourself is almost an original thing these days. It's like, it's a rare thing that somebody would actually be imperfect or, you know, whatever. That's why Gavin is so awesome, is because he doesn't try to be, you know, some super snooty photographer. He allows his sense of humor to come through, and I just try to allow my personality to come through. And that, I think, has set me apart, because I'm not trying to play the game the way everybody else is playing the game. I'm just trying to produce content that I'm proud of and that I like and that I would be interested in. And if it resonates with people, cool. If it doesn't, that's how it goes. You know, I'm not going to try to sell people, you know, Lightroom presets just because I could. Because the reason I'm not going to do that is because it's a ripoff. Like, there's so many people that try to just, I don't know, they almost prey on their followings. And I want to be one of the people that actually respect my followings and treat my following as equals, because they are. Because in actuality, I'm just some middle-aged, overweight white guy that can take a pretty picture. That doesn't make me better than anybody else. And so the very fact that I have that perspective, I think, allows me to be different from the crowd. And being different from the crowd is what draws an audience to you, because, you know, people are drawn to people like themselves generally. And I end up with one of the coolest followings ever because they're all laid back like me, generally speaking. So, yeah, that's all I got for you guys. That's the random rant of the week. I'll catch you guys later. I'll stick around for a couple minutes and talk to you guys in the chat room. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. And let's see if I can figure out how to end this live stream, shall we? So we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy, guys. Make sure you hit the subscribe and the bell and all that stuff that everybody tells you to do. But the bell thing, that's actually a good deal. Hit that bell. Ding-a-ling-a-ling.